You're listening to The Whole Truth, a Resources Rising Stars podcast.
There's an old joke that goes, what was the first thing Adam said to Eve? Stand back, I don't know how big this thing gets. And it's a line that could equally apply to Simon Lawson and Spartan Resources as they get about the business of growing this spectacular gold discovery in Western Australia. It's known as Never Never, and I think that name could well be changed to Never Never Ends. Looking at these results they put out recently, 170 metres they've hit gold below the existing resource. Now bear in mind that resource is already nearly 1 million ounces. Simon Lawson tells us on this episode of the Whole Truth podcast about how important these results are. They are extending the mineralisation well below the existing resource, well along strike. There's an exploration target update coming in the next couple of weeks, he says, and there will be a resource update in the middle of the year. He says this will continue to grow, it's just a question of how big it gets. I'm Paul Armstrong. I think you're going to get a lot out of this podcast. This is a spectacular turnaround story, one of the best turnaround stories in the West Australian gold industry you've ever seen. There is clearly immense growth here. Just how much, only time will tell. He has 5 rigs burning away and plenty of work being done below the waterline. Enjoy this episode of the Whole Truth podcast. Simon Lawson, what a cracking headline you put on your release, ASX release this week. Visible gold logged 170 metres below the resource. Now, bearing in mind that resource is just short of 1 million ounces as we sit here today. 170 metres below that resource. What have you got on your hands?
Look, Paul, it's pretty easy to say. It's quite spectacular. Getting that drill hole, seeing that vis gold there, and we actually set a precedent for this before when we posted a very similar situation where we drilled 130 metres below our 300,000 ounce resource, and we went very quickly to 720. So I'm very confident that we're going to grow this resource really quickly. We've got another deep hole on the way at the moment, so some more good news hopefully at the end of that one.
To hit mineralisation 170 metres below a resource, is this yet another game changer for Spartan?
Yeah, I think that word gets overused by some people, but yeah, I think it absolutely is. It just keeps growing this amazing story. I mean, we went from practically zero to 1 million ounces in 12 months, putting Never Never together behind that Spartan brand, and to me, this just, we don't know where the limits are. It just keeps going. Let's
look at these results in a little bit of detail. 170 metres below the resource. You've also announced some other spectacular results, 25 metres at 9 and the like, outside, or at 6.5 outside the resource in places. What do we know from these results that we didn't know a week ago?
Well, I think the key takeaway on that, the deeper hole, the 20.5 metres of mineralisation, that's very, very strong width. There was some concern that we were going to get a pinch, or the ore body would pinch out at some stage. That had been aired to me several times when someone said to me, for instance, 6 metres at 33 was seen as disappointing, which in most mines that's an incredible drill hit. But given the widths that we've delivered over the period of time we've been growing this resource, to see 20 metre widths come back at the bottom of a drill hole at 878 metres down, or 871 where the intercept started, that is just validation that this system is giant. It's massive at depth. If we can hit it 120 to 140 metres south of that drill hit at the same RL, the sky's the limit. This thing just keeps going. The other drill hits that we put out are they're just showing the scale. What we wanted to do was not put all our eggs in one basket. So we drilled a couple of other targets just to make sure that we could keep that news flow going, keep that resource growth going. Obviously try and optimise the drilling cost, because as you get deeper at Never Never you start to spend more money. But we just wanted to make sure we had some optionality. And what's turned out to be 2 or 3 targets that we thought one of them might come off, all 3 of them are coming off.
So it's still open at depth below that hit. I mean, this is, I suppose, you're
absolutely.
So you're heading for a name change. Never Never becomes Never Never Ends.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of memes getting around. Never Never. Does it ever end? So
you've got mineralisation outside the resource at depth. You've got mineralisation outside the resource at these new targets along strike.
That's right.
When are we going to see these results reflected in some sort of resource update?
So mid-year is what we're targeting for a project resource update. We've slowed down on the frequency of producing resource updates for this project because what we want to do is put out chunky, meaningful ones. We've got 5 rigs on site at the moment. 3 of them are drilling Never Never, so we can imagine that there'll be a substantial upgrade there. But we're going to be posting some pretty good upgrades by the looks of it from some of these other drill hits. If any indication to go by, hitting outside the resource at 4 pillars, 15 metres at 6 grams, that's never been seen before in that part of the world.
These are absolutely sensational results, aren't they? And you've got just growth everywhere. What do you do to demonstrate that quickly that this is going to translate to resources? How many rigs have you got going?
So 5 rigs, 3 at Never Never. One is sitting on the 4 pillars West Winds trend at the moment, and the other one's on Sly Fox, which prior to the discovery of Never Never was actually the highest grade deposit at Dalgaranga. And we basically prioritised that down the list because it was further from the mill than this spectacular Never Never deposit. So we left it alone last year, but coming into 24, we challenged ourselves to, basically see how many more targets we could bring and see how much more volume and how many more ounces we can put on that table.
Now, you've got that near new mill sitting there, but it's not a feature of the equation at the moment, is it? This is about growing the inventory, creating shareholder wealth by finding more gold.
Correct, yeah. So we are keeping that mill in very good condition because obviously we don't want to depreciate the asset value by letting it just rust away. So we're making sure we keep it in good nick. But what's happening in front of that mill is something that is pretty special. Growing one new discovery to almost 1 million ounces in 12 months and now finding that there's a lot more resource upside at these other targets within 2.5 kilometres of that plant is just amazing. So we'll keep that program going of resource growth in front of that plant.
Those people who have been following this story for some time, Simon, will be aware that this is a company going back before your time, your involvement with it, has, it's fair to say, a somewhat checkered past. It's had some challenges on various fronts, and it culminated in you taking the reins and raising money, recapitalising the company at 10 cents. It's a spectacular turnaround. What explains that journey where you go from a position of being in financial dire straits, the project just not working, to a situation now where after having recapped at 10 cents, you've now got a share price today, I see, of 50 cents, and you've got nearly 1 million ounces in a resource and clearly immense growth to come. How do you get such a transition so quickly? What changed?
Our belief. We basically just backed ourselves. I mean, I've got a great team, a lot of knowledge, a lot of IP in the team that I inherited when I came into the company. We basically executed on the first idea that they wanted to drill, and that was the discovery of Never Never, and that's just grown. When we went into the recap situation, it was to back ourselves, to secure the assets that we had and grow that resource. Now, people had to believe that. We had to go out and find some people that would believe the same story, and the Tembo guys came in and helped to cornerstone that recapitalisation, and that belief now has been validated and vindicated quite substantially.
I mean, it is shaping up as one of the great turnaround stories of the WA gold industry.
Yeah, that'd be fair to say, yeah. Sometimes I have to be forced to reflect back on what we've actually managed to achieve here. This is a unicorn discovery 600 metres away from a plant that was ostensibly built for a different deposit, but just coincidentally happens to be right there as well.
And the grade is dramatically higher than it was in its earlier days as an operating asset.
That's right, exactly right. So it was sort of processing when I came into the picture around about 0.8 to 0.9 grams a tonne on a good day. We did have record quarter early 22, but we realised that record quarter came from a high-grade area that was previously sort of unconstrained or unrecognised. That turns out to be the West Winds target that we're drilling now. So there was a series of observations that have led us to the point where we know that there's a number of these high-grade structures, and that's why we're able to now leverage 5 rigs and drill and extend the resources on each of them.
Do you believe there's a lot more growth to come?
Massive. I challenged myself that we could get to 1 million ounces at some stage at just one of these deposits, and what we've done is shown by the end of 23 that we'd almost achieved that. And I felt like, if we wanted to, we could have pushed it over that, but for me, we held back because we're going about this in a very systematic way, using those rigs in a very patient, systematic way just to make sure we grow those resources. We know where we're going. Occasionally, we'll take a bit of a risk, and that 170-metre extension potentially to the resource based on assays at Never Never is a good example of taking that calculated risk. If you've drilled over 450 drill holes and it shows it goes in one direction, one more that basically does a big step out is worth taking.
So what does the next 6 months hold?
A lot of news flow. And at the end of that 6 months, we'll produce a new mineral resource estimate. We'll put an exploration target out in the next couple of weeks, and that will help to channel people's understanding for where we think we can go with this. I think everyone will be pretty happy with where we are going to sort of establish that hurdle. We did deliver into our exploration target last time, almost absolutely dead centre, but at the upper end. And we plan on doing that, if not exceeding it this time as well.
So 5 rigs turning, resource update in the making. How much money have you got in the bank?
So 39.2 at the end of last quarter. 5 rigs burns quickly, but we've been very careful with our cash management, and we will probably take some rigs out of the system just to reduce the cash burn as we move into that mineral resource estimate phase, and then basically reset, work out exactly what we want to drill and where we need to focus on that next second campaign.
It's a spectacular turnaround story, isn't it? It really is. I think the market is probably still trying to wake up to how something can go from being so bad to so good so quickly.
Yeah, look, and that's been shared with some of the people that I've spoken to. My visit to North America was a good example of that. There was a lot of sort of a perception that Gascoyne was a specific type of company that wasn't worth investing in. But in one case, it took me 8 minutes to convert the second biggest precious metals fund in the world to invest in our company, and they're now a 7% shareholder.
It's about as simple as it gets, though, isn't it? Drill, more drill, grow the inventory, make sure that the mill stays in good nick for any such decision somewhere down the track.
Yeah.
It seems like that might be a while off. That it'd be hard to argue that bringing something into production would compare to the value you can create for shareholders by just drilling more holes.
Yeah, look, and that's something that we can continually do. How do we deploy that capital that we've been given by shareholders to use in the best way possible? We did say we would do a drill drive. We didn't do that because we felt like we could achieve more without doing that drill drive. And again, I think we've been vindicated in that decision, because that $20 to $25 million that drill drive would have cost us, we've actually achieved that and better that we thought we could have done from that. But we've spent that money in the drill bit instead.
Perhaps the restart of the plant is an issue for the next owner, whoever that may be.
Well, look, what it does by this resource growth and keeping that plant in good condition is it gives us options. The more growth we have, the more ounces we can put in front of that plant that is so unquestionably going to be economic. You turn that plant back on. It just gives us options. So the world is our oyster, I suppose, at the moment.
Cracking job, cracking story, cracking results. It's hard to see how it can really get much better beyond what you put out this week. I mean, more of the same is going to have to create more shareholder value. Yeah,
look, the assays coming back from that drill hole is going to be really important. The next drill hole that's pretty much sitting next to it, but probably will intersect the ore body around 120 to 140 metres south of that and create what is essentially going to be a strike length, but at over 800 metres down. That's really going to demonstrate to people that this is a very substantial system in itself. But then with the Four Pillars drilling and West Winds drilling ongoing and the Sly Fox drilling now, this thing grows very quickly. We've basically changed the order of magnitude in which we can grow this thing.
Well, Simon, thanks for your time today. We really look forward to seeing that exploration target that you refer to in the next couple of weeks. I think you're right. It will give people who are sort of trying to get their heads around the success here some concept of the growth that's in the wings, bring together some of these results. Assays pending, 5 rigs turning. It's why people invest in gold stories.
That's right, exactly. Yeah, that's why it's exciting. For me, with record gold prices, it's great.
Great, thanks for your time.
No worries, thank you, Paul.
You've been listening to The Whole Truth, a Resources Rising Stars podcast, produced by Resource Media, hosted by Paul Armstrong for Reed Corporate. Please note that Reed Corporate does not provide investment advice, and investors should seek personalised advice before making any investment decisions.